Let's bring in Chris Mannix. Chris obviously covers the NBA, but also boxing. I don't know if I'm breaking the news to you here, Chris. I'm sorry if I am, but Sweet Pea Whitaker dying at the age of 55.
Yeah, and I just saw him recently. He hangs around with his former promoter at main events at a lot of the major shows. I mean, just to add on to everything you said there, maybe the best defensive fighter ever. I mean, he and like Willie Pep from long before then. And we talk about it often with Floyd because Floyd considers himself the best defensive fighter. But I think Pernell Whitaker was the best defensive fighter I've ever seen.
All right, some basketball here. We got Jerry West coming up next hour. I don't know what role he played in this. Is there any Jerry West greater as a front office personnel or player?
I mean, it's really close. I mean, Jerry will, I think, will be the first to admit that he wasn't involved in the nitty gritty of it. That belonged to Lawrence Frank, of course, and Michael Winger, who, came over from Oklahoma City, had a relationship with Sam Presti for a number of years. That really helped kind of grease the skids and get that Paul George deal in motion. I think Jerry's involvement, from everything I've been told, is that, when there was some uncertainty about whether to pull the trigger, I think Jerry's voice was pretty strong that, we do this deal, that you only get opportunities like this every so often. And even though the price is high, you have to make this deal. I think that's where Jerry kind of came in as one of the stronger voices to absolutely do it.
I applaud you because when you don't know, then you tell me you don't know. But when you do, then you usually have, cite sources. I said from the beginning, the one thing I know that I don't know is anything that Kawhi Leonard is going to do. I just don't. And even I said I get more nervous because I thought Durant from the outset was going to the Knicks. I had based that off nothing other than a gut feel. And the closer we got, the more people saying that he was going to the Knicks, the more I thought he's not going to the Knicks. Like, these are two, they're very unique players. One is very public and one is very private. But, with Kawhi going to the Clippers, how long ago do you think he made up his mind he was going to the Clippers?
I don't think he's had this sort of resolve in his head that he was going to the Clippers. I think I know there were plenty of people. I guess plenty is too strong a word. There aren't that many people around him, but people in his inner circle like the idea of the Clippers. As I've said and written, the Clippers had been shadow recruiting him kind of all season long, and they were very much, he was their top priority all throughout. But if the Raptors had been able to come to some kind of agreement where they took on Paul George, I think Kawhi would have gone back there. I mean, this was like, I don't know who you vote for Executive of the Year. My vote, by the way, goes to SI's Lee Jenkins, who's over the Clippers as well. So I think we'll give him an Executive of the Year vote. Shout out Lee Jenkins. But, I mean, Kawhi Leonard is, kind of part of that process. Like, he sort of orchestrated this and said, whatever team gets me or gets Paul George, I'm going to find my way there. And he got the Clippers to potentially sacrifice their long-term future for the chance to win multiple championships in the next 3 or 4 years. That was, I mean, nobody saw that coming, and that's why he's a very difficult guy to read and a hard guy to predict anything's going to happen with.
All right, and then you get Paul George. So we asked the question. Our poll question is, who's going to go farther, the Lakers or the Clippers? It's overwhelming the Clippers. That surprise you at all?
No, not at all. I mean,
are they better than the Lakers?
Oh, definitely. I mean, Dan, I sat here and I was the first one, I think, to say to you last year that the Lakers were a combustible group.
Yes.
It's the same thing this year. Like, we're not, I mean, they're more talented at the very top with Anthony Davis, but you're bringing back a lot of the same cast of characters, and you add on to it the, Melrose Place-like situation with the coaching staff, where, if Frank Vogel loses like 2 of the first 3 games, it's Vogel watch out there.
Wait. You just quoted Melrose Place?
I mean, I was thinking of, off the top of my head, a drama. I mean, I guess I could have gone with 90210. I mean, that's more my wheelhouse.
You're sad.
But I mean, well, that's you've known that for a number of years now.
You're sad. Okay,
But
the
you know what I
player
mean,
on the
though, like,
Lakers who really makes you nervous.
The player on the Lakers that really makes me nervous, I would still say Rondo. And I just don't know. Like, the Lakers did some nice things towards the very end. I'm a big Avery Bradley guy. I mean, there's a lot of people that watched him play for the Clippers that think he kind of washed, but it's only 28. You're not paying him like max level money. He's a two-way player that I think could be helpful. But I think Rondo, if Rondo's going to play a key role again, and he's on a one-year deal, it's like a number of these other guys are basically on 1+1 or 2-year deals. It's the same type of problem where you have guys. Oh no, what am I talking about? DeMarcus Cousins. That's easy. That's in the, I forgot he had signed there a minute ago. Like, what am I talking about? Like that's the guy that he went through what he went through last year, thinking it was going to lead to a big contract, and he's making less this year in his next deal, and there's a pretty good chance he's not going to start. So, how does that all play itself out? Now, Anthony Davis wanted to play with DeMarcus Cousins. That was clear, and Rondo has a strong relationship from Sacramento with DeMarcus Cousins, but how's that going to work when he's coming off the bench and looking at, age 30 and another year going by where he's not earning himself a top-level contract? That, no-brainer, toughest one there.
Then you got the Rockets they bring in Westbrook, and then they finally dump Chris Paul, and OKC gets draft picks. Let me start with OKC, and then we'll circle back to Westbrook and the Rockets. Is Billy Donovan more likely to stay now, given this young team with draft picks, and they'll get rid of Chris Paul at some point, or could you see Billy Donovan saying, "I'm going to pull the ripcord on this and get out of this and go back to college"?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a conversation. I don't know if it goes go back to college. There might be another pro opportunity out there for him at some point. Look, this isn't what Billy Donovan signed up for. Yeah. He signed up to coach Kevin Durant and Russell Westbrook, and he left a great job at Florida for that. And look, it's guys going to the pros. I mean, it's their dream. They don't have to deal with recruiting and all the machinations that go through college. So I don't think Billy Donovan's going to run back to the college ranks. But if another pro opportunity presented itself, I don't know, maybe he'd consider that. I think that's going to have to be a conversation because this is the very, very, very long game that Oklahoma City is playing. I do think, Dan, that they had as good an offseason as anybody because that team had plateaued. Like, I don't care what was happening next year. It wasn't winning anything. And, from my conversations with people on that side of the fence, there was a very real possibility that if they flamed out early next year, that they were going to have to be proactive in moving some of these guys, especially Paul George, because of his contract situation, and wouldn't have got anywhere near the haul back in return. I mean, think about what happened there, like a confluence of events that Paul George asked for a trade to a team that was desperate to trade for him, that gave up a record haul of assets. They got assets back for Russell Westbrook. As of like Thursday at Summer League, Dan, I'm asking around of executives of teams to find who's interested in Russell Westbrook. And I was getting some pretty emphatic no's, including from like the Detroits of the world, like teams you might envision Russell Westbrook going there. But they got assets back in exchange for Russell Westbrook. And I think at some point they're just going to flip Chris Paul off to Miami once they can make those numbers work. So I think Oklahoma City had a tremendous, last couple of weeks in making these deals.
Paulie proposed last hour that maybe the Rockets, to make this work with James Harden and Russell Westbrook Jr. III, is you platoon them. You have Harden with the first group, and then Westbrook comes off the bench with the second group, that you rotate them. How do they make this work in Houston?
Well, I mean, you have to do that for starters. I mean, that's kind of what they did with Chris Paul anyway, and it's what Billy Donovan did with Durant and Russell Westbrook. If you go back to that 1 year, like Durant started and then came out of the game at like the 6-minute mark, like he was gone, and then they started staggering those minutes. The problem becomes like in the fourth quarter, how do you make it all work? Like how does it all come together? Because Russell Westbrook is not the player that you would envision being successful playing off of James Harden. He's just not a shooter, and he's never going to be a shooter. So whoever is guarding Russell Westbrook when Harden has the ball is going to be able to be a de facto double team like every time. So when I talked, and this broke just as I was leaving Vegas, but in talking to some head coaches out there, one thing that was consistent was that, Mike D'Antoni is going to have a long conversation with Harden about playing off the ball more. Like he's going to have to accept, a different type of role. And, theoretically, Harden's done that in Oklahoma City, but that was a lifetime ago. I mean, a lifetime and a different player ago. It's just there were a lot of head scratching whats when it came to this. I think the deal was more about getting off Chris Paul and them realizing that relationship wasn't working. But this one, I just from a purely basketball sense, I don't. And I haven't talked to everybody, but there's not a lot of people that I've talked to that see an easy way this makes sense.
What are your expectations for Golden State this year?
Depending on how Clay comes back and when he comes back, they're a sneaky could win the conference. Like, really could. Like, that's I look across the West and I see every team with question marks. Like, there's no – I mean, look, I love what the Clippers did, but, I mean, who's their starting 4 and 5? Like, their front court is still – kind of decimated at this point, and they're going to have to, pick the buyout market pretty clean to get some of these guys that might be available. I kind of sneaky like what the Warriors did to recover. I mean, I like Willie Cauley-Stein in that mix, athletic big who's going to play off, guys like Steph and run the floor really well. I mean, I know they lost Iguodala and, of course, Durant, but they did a nice job in recovering and signing some lower key type of players. Now, Clay is obviously the most important piece of this. If he comes back in late March and it is not the same player for the rest of the season, they're a first round potential fodder. But if he comes back in February and is able to get his legs under him by the time April rolls around, the ACL injury, as you know, Dan, it's not as devastating as it used to be. The Achilles injury is terrifying. The ACL injury just is a matter of when, not if, a guy gets it back. So if Clay gets it back come playoff time, the experience of that team and like Draymond, I mean, that they're a team that could win that conference.
Can Kevin Durant come back this season?
I don't. And I was at the press conference for the Nets in Vegas, and I wrote a whole piece about kind of the inner workings of it in the magazine this past week. I don't know what the Nets are doing. Like all the smart moves they made, I don't know what they're doing in leaving the door open for Kevin Durant to come back.
Yeah.
Like, it just doesn't make any sense whatsoever.
Haven't they learned from what Golden State did when the owner said that Kevin is coming back, and then we put him on the clock, and then he felt pressured to come back? Like, the last thing I want is him to feel pressured to come back.
The only thing I can think of, Dan, is the day before they had that press conference, Sean Marks had a sit-down meeting with Kevin Durant for the first time. And maybe Kevin Durant told him, don't rule me out. You never know what I can do. But when they get into, they know the timetable. The doctor, and now they've been able to talk to the doctor, officially. The doctor for Kevin Durant is the team doctor for the Nets. There's no way that he's going to tell them to, be optimistic about this. This is a consistent, 9 to 12-month injury. And even if it's on the short end, you're talking about, April of getting him back. And that's insane. If you're, the sixth seed in the playoffs, you're going to bring Kevin Durant back and drop him in for 15 minutes a night coming off an Achilles injury. Let this be a redshirt year, as most people expect it's going to be anyway, and take that off the table. If they get to training camp and don't rule him out, I'm going to be surprised, because leaving the door open for now, I guess it doesn't really hurt anybody. There's no games being played, and the NBA, thankfully, is going to fade off into the sunset for the next month or so. But if they get to training camp, I mean, let it go, man. Do not have this become a monthly thing where Kenny Atkinson is standing up there asking what's Durant's progress, when's he coming back.
Final 30 seconds. Did Zion deserve to be criticized for being out of shape in the summer league?
No, he deserves to be criticized if he's out of shape in training camp. The guy probably hasn't played a minute of competitive basketball since Duke got eliminated from the tournaments. Yeah, he was out of shape, and there were a lot of guys I saw out there that were out of shape, especially those top-tier guys, the handful of them that played. No, he's got a lot of work to do, before he gets into training camp. But if come September, he's able to give you 35 minutes a night. This is all forgotten.
Thank you, Chris. We appreciate it, as always.
You got it, Dan.
That's Chris Mannix, the senior NBA writer for Sports Illustrated.
For more Dan Patrick Show, tune into Audience Channel 239 on DirecTV. Stream for free on BR Live or download the Dan Patrick Show app.